keeping the flow for a bit, we're talking about another Arc 5 archetype and another fusion spam archetype at that. We're taking a look at Frightfurs, often considered to be one of the best fusion spammers of all time. And they were used by an interesting character known as Sora Shunin, one of the many lollipop enthusiasts in the anime world. And yeah, let's start taking a look at the monster lineup, and before we do, Frightfurs are an archetype known as monsters whose two sub-archetypes fuse into the said Frightfur archetype. One of the sub-archetypes being Fluffals, first up being Fluffal Octopus. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one Fluffal or Edge Imp monster. Edge Imp is the second sub-archetype of this archetype. In your graveyard, add it to your hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon of a Frightfur fusion monster, you can target up to 2 of your banished monsters, return them to the graveyard, and you can only use this effect of Fluffal Octopus once per turn. So yeah, this effect is actually really insane, as it offers recycling and setup for fusion plays. And yeah, the archetype has and doesn't have many ways of recycling their banished stuff. And yeah, if it returns them to the graveyard, which works in conjunction with one of their other monsters, which we'll get into later, which really needs that graveyard returning effect. So yeah, Fluffal Octopus is often ran at 2 or 3 in any Frightfur build. Next up we have Fluffal Mouse, another level 1, and during your main phase you can special summon up to 2 copies of Fluffal Mouse from your deck. This effect can only be used once while this card is face up on the field. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck the turn you activate this effect except Frightfur monsters. If it wasn't for that god-awful restriction with the extra deck, this thing would be a pretty insane link material target. And yeah, Fluffal Mouse is always ran at 3 in any build because the special summoning and swarming capability this thing offered is insanely good. And it certainly works in conjunction with one of their fusion monsters, which I'll get into later. So yeah, Fluffal Mouse is an insane card to have fun with, and it should never be ran at any less than 3. Next up we have Fluffal Cat. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon, you can target one polymerization in your graveyard added to your hand. You can only use this effect of Fluffal Cat once per turn. Now this is a pretty sweet effect to have. And yeah, if you're wondering why it's limited to polymerization, well, it's because these things do not have many of their archetypal fusion options, so this is acceptable as well. Combined with another monster of theirs, you can make pretty fun fusion plays back in the day, because link spamming is more important now. But yeah, combined, if you use this thing along with that monster as a fusion material, you can get some the polymerization and some monsters back to your hand to continue on with your fusion spamming. So yeah, I'd say run 1 or 2 of these. Then the monster we were talking about earlier is Fluffal Rabbit. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon, you can target one Edge Imp Sabers or one Fluffal monster in your graveyard except Fluffal Rabbit added to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. So yeah, this is an insanely fun combo to pull off with Fluffal Cat, since you can get a Poly and a monster back, and you can fuse it. You can either use the fusion monster you summon to form a bigger fusion, or to continue spamming more smaller fusions onto the field. And yeah, Fluffal Rabbit is always ran at as many copies as you run Fluffal Cat. So if you run 1 or 2 Fluffal Cats, you always run 1 or 2 Fluffal Rabbits. Alright, next up we have Fluffal Wings, and this is a monster that benefits from Fluffal Octo's recycling effect from Banished Pile. If this card is in your graveyard and you control Toy Vendor, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then can target one Fluffal monster in your graveyard, banish it, and if you do, draw 1 card. You can send one Toy Vendor you control to the graveyard, and if you do, draw 1 card. You can only use this effect once per turn. Quick heads up, Toy Vendor is on a continuous spell card of theirs, which we'll be looking at later. And yeah, this is the only source of draw power the Archetype has, which is one of its biggest flaws, since it's basically a fusion spam archetype, so Fluffal Octo is really appreciated here. So yeah, this is a really good card to have in mind, but it can cost you games if you run too many of these, so one or two of these should be acceptable. I prefer one actually when I run it. Alright, next up we have their final level 1, that being Fluffal Patchwork, one of their newer supports. And this card is treated as a Frightfur monster while it is on the field. While this card is face up on the field, it can be used as a substitute for any one fusion material whose name specifically lists Frightfur fusion monster card, but the other fusion materials must be correct. And there are two monsters that specifically required a Frightfur monster in order to be fusion summoned, and yeah, we'll get to those. So yeah, this is there's another older support card with a higher level and stats that does the same thing, but this thing is summonable with 1-for-1 if you really want to stretch it here. So run by preference, if you ask me. Fluffal Sheep is their first level 2. And if you control a Fluffal monster except Fluffal Sheep, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can return one other Fluffal monster you control to the hand to special summon one Edge Imp monster from your hand or graveyard. You can only use this effect of Fluffal Sheep once per turn. Ah, this is actually a pretty nice effect, since self-bouncing is the hip thing to do again. Since you can bounce back some of your stuff that you don't need at the field at the time to recycle something from the graveyard, or to switch it up with something you need from your hand at the time. And it's an easy special summon monster, so link spamming is a plus here. So yeah, Fluffal Sheep, you run it at 3, basically any build nowadays. Fluffal Owl is their next level 2, and when this card is normal or special summoned from the hand, you can add 1 polymerization from your deck to your hand. You can pay 500 life points to fusion summon 1 Frightfur fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials. You can only use this effect once per turn. Again, run 3 because a poly searcher in an archetype, I cannot express how important that is. And one thing I like about this card is you can pay 500 life points to perform a fusion summon without a poly, which is not something that many fusion archetypes from back in the day can argue about having. So yeah, Fluffal Owl is a really good card, and you should run it at 3 at all times. Next up we have their first level 3, Fluffal Bear. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, set 1 toy vendor directly from your deck to your spell and trap zone. You can tribute this card and target 1 polymerization in your graveyard added to your hand. You can only use one Fluffal Bear effect per turn, and only once that turn. Jesus. Yeah, this is, I mean, underwhelming, really. It's one of their first support cards ever released and ever showcased. And searching Toy Vendor doesn't really benefit you that much except for Fluffal Wings. We'll get to Toy Vendor soon, but yeah. If you run this, you run this basically because of one of their fusion monsters, which we'll get into later. And if you really want to recycle polymerizations, you basically use Fusion Reserve or Fusion Recovery. Yeah, you only use those if you want to recycle polys. Alright, their next monster is Edge Imp Sabers, finally getting to the Edge Imp lineup. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can place 1 card from your hand on top of the deck to special summon this card in defense position, and you only gain this effect once per turn. I mean, it's a tolerable recovery, and it can save you in a pinch if you don't have any monsters on the field to evade a direct attack. And yeah, most of the Frightfur fusion monsters require this as a fusion material, so this is a pretty okay effect to have, and it's one of their first support cards ever to be showcased and released, so yeah, it's okay for the time. Run 3 of these because it's actually one of their best fusion monsters that require this as fusion material, so yeah, run at 3. Their next monster is another Edge Imp, that being Edge Imp Saw. When this card is normal summoned, you can send one Fluffal monster from your hand to the graveyard, draw 2 cards, then place 1 card from your hand on either top or the bottom of the deck. You only gain this effect once per turn. The only decent target for this thing to go off is Fluffal Wings, and that's as far as it goes. I mean, you go +1, and basically, if you choose to place the card on the top of the deck, it offers some deck thinning setup. That's as far as it goes, and I mean, yeah. You run this because it requires one of their fusion materials requires this as fusion material, so yeah, run by preference and run optimally at your own risk or whatever you prefer. Next up is actually another 3-off staple in the Edge Imp department, that being Edge Imp Chain, their first level 4 monster. When this card declares an attack, you can add 1 Edge Imp Chain from your deck to your hand. If this card is sent from your hand or field to the graveyard, you can add 1 Frightfur card from your deck to your hand. You gain this effect once per turn, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn and 1 of these effects per turn. Alright, so yeah, this is a 3-off staple because first off, the attacking search effect is really weird, but it's really useful since it dies upon leaving the field, and so yeah, if it leaves the field, it searches out a Frightfur card, which is one of their which can include one of their archetypal fusion spells. So yeah, this is really good. Yeah, run 3. Their next monster is another level 4, that being Edge Imp Frightfur. And this card is always treated as a Frightfur card, just like Patchwork. And you can target 1 Frightfur fusion monster you control or is in your graveyard. This card's attack and defense become equal to the original attack and defense of that monster until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect of Edge Imp Frightfur once per turn. So basically I prefer this over Patchwork because it's an archetypal Xiangsheng magician at that, only without the damage restriction. And it's a level 4, so it offers a rank 4 plays, and it's a really decent target for Foolish Burial since it works in tandem with one of their archetypal fusion spells. So yeah, run 2 of these. That's the optimal number, I think. Next up is Edge Imp Tomahawk. You can send 1 Edge Imp monster from your hand to the graveyard and inflict 800 damage to your opponent. You can send 1 Edge Imp monster from your deck to the graveyard except Edge Imp Tomahawk. This card's name becomes the sent monster's name until the end phase. You can only use each effect of Edge Imp Tomahawk once per turn. The discarding from the hand to burn your opponent is completely irrelevant and you will never use it, but the deck dumping effect is actually pretty relevant since it sets up your graveyard and you can send Edge Imp Sabers to the graveyard to rename this thing to Edge Imp Sabers to help you get out their one of their best fusion monsters quicker. So yeah, run 1 and 2 if you really feel like it. Next up is Fluffal Leo. When this card declares an attack, it gains 500 effect and then 500 attack until the end of the battle phase. That's literally all it does, being a big stupid beat stick. Moving on, we have Fluffal Dog. When this card is normal or special summoned from the hand, you can add 1 Edge Imp Sabers or 1 Fluffal monster from your deck to your hand, except Fluffal Dog. You can only use the effect of Fluffal Dog once per turn. So yeah, basic archetypal searcher upon normal or special summoning, Stratos would be proud, and you always run this at 3, no question about it. It's one of their best searches of being normal or special summons, so yeah. It works in tandem with Fluffal Sheep as well, so yeah, really good card. Next up is one of their newer support cards, that being Fluffal Penguin. During your main phase, you can special summon 1 Fluffal monster from your hand except Fluffal Penguin. This effect can only be used once while this card is face up on the field. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon of a Frightfur fusion monster, you can draw 2 cards. Then discard 1 card. You can only use this effect of Fluffal Penguin once per turn. So this is a pretty insane effect, no question about it. It offers special summoning, which is a huge deal in the now link-focused meta, and it offers you to a Dark World Dealings effect, sort of. And yeah, this is a really nice card, and it's usually ran at 2 or 3. A really good card, really. Alright, now getting to their newest support, those being their Pendulum monsters. The first up being Fluffal Angel. Really now. And it's a scale 8, level 2, and its Pendulum effect is that you can target one Frightfur or Edge Imp monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except fusion monsters. You can only use this effect of Fluffal Angel once per turn. And its monster effect is that you contribute this card to then target one Frightfur fusion monster in your graveyard, discard one card, and if you do, special summon that target. You can only use this effect of Fluffal Angel once per turn. Well, it's okay. It's okay. The Pendulum effect is decent, but the monster effect is... It would be good because if it wasn't for the ignoring the summoning conditions clause, because they're best monsters which you would want to summon with this effect cannot be summoned except by fusion summon, and a few archetypal trap cards which we'll get into later. So yeah, this is primarily used as a Pendulum scale effect, so yeah, run by preference. Their next monster is another Pendulum, Edge Imp Cotton Eater. A level 7 with a scale 1, and the Pendulum effect is that all fusion monsters you control gain 300 attack. Once per turn, if a Frightfur fusion monster is fusion summoned to your field, you can draw one card. Monster effect: if this card is special summoned, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each Frightfur monster in your graveyard. You can only use this effect with Agent Cotton Eater once per turn. Yeah, just like Fluffal Angel, you always use the Pendulum effect because, I mean, the attack boost is kind of pointless, but the draw power is insanely nice because the Archetype does not have much draw power to speak of, so this is always a nice effect to have. Yeah, run 3 of these. Their final monster, main deck monster that is Frightfur Meister, the only Frightfur main deck monster whose original name is Frightfur. It's a level 8, it's a scale 4, and its Pendulum effect is that you contribute one level 4 or lower Fluffal, Frightfur, or Edge Imp monsters to special summon one Fiend monster from your deck with the same level as the tributed monster had on the field, but with a different name. You can only use this effect of Frightfur Meister once per turn. Monster effect is that during your main phase you can special summon one level 4 or lower Fluffal, Frightfur, or Edge Imp monster from your hand or deck. Also, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except fusion monsters. You contribute two or more Fiend monsters, special summon one Frightfur fusion monster from your extra deck whose level is equal to total original levels of the tributed monsters. This is treated as a fusion summon. You can only use each effect of Frightfur Meister once per turn. The monster effect actually serves well in conjunctions with their bigger fusion monsters, since they can evade their summoning requirements. However, the biggest problem I have with this card is that it's nearly impossible to summon in their own archetype, since Fluffal Angel scale is 8 instead of 9, so it cannot be Pendulum summoned. However, what I really find funny about the Pendulum effect of this thing is that it can summon any Fiend monster, not only Edge Imp monsters or Fluffal monsters or Frightfur monsters, so yeah. I mean, it's the only relevant way it can summon another copy of itself to the field, so yeah. This is a really questionable card to consider running, so yeah, run by preference. Moving on to their extra deck, first up we have Frightfur Sheep. It requires Edge Imp Chain and one Fluffal monster. If this card battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, or if this card is in your possession destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card, and if you do, it gains 800 attack. You can only use this effect of Frightfur Sheep once per turn. So yeah, this is a really nice effect since it's an archetypal Armadas with amazing protection for a level 5 fusion monster with 2000 attack. So yeah, since you run 3 Edge Imp Chains, you can go wrong with running at least 2 or 3 of Frightfur Sheeps. So yeah, good card. Their next monster is the level 6 Frightfur Bear. It requires specifically Edge Imp Sabers and specifically Fluffal Bear. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can equip that monster to discard as an equipped spell card. With this effect, the equipped monster gains 1000 attack points. This thing is supposed to be a really, really big and ugly beat stick, nothing else. And yeah, this is primarily the reason why you run Fluffal Bear. And yeah, don't run this. There are way better options in the deck except this thing. One of said options being Frightful Wolf, requires specifically Edgem Sabers and one or more Fluffal monsters, and must be fusion summoned with the above fusion materials and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card can attack a number of times each battle phase, up to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon. So yeah, this thing is seen in many OTK builds of Frightfurs, and it doesn't fail to disappoint. And yeah, it's a really nice card, no question about it. And you basically run 2 or 3 of these in any build, and provided with some equips these things have access to, it can be a really insane card to pull off and build decks around. So yeah, run at least 2 or 3 of these. And now, moving on to one of their best fusion monsters of all time, that being Frightfur Tiger, and requires specifically Edgem Sabers and 1 or more Fluffal monsters. When this card is fusion summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon, destroy them. All Frightfur monsters you control gain 300 attack for each Fluffal monster and Frightfur monster you control, and you can only control 1 Frightfur Tiger. So yes, this thing is insanely powerful. Well, it's an archetypal junk destroyer, an even better one at that. And the removal this thing offers is insane. I mean, really insane. And this is basically why you run 3 Fluffal Mouse at all time. Since provided with Edgem Sabers, you can pop 4 cards on the field just like that, and minimally 2 if you summon it with the least amount of setup. And the battle boost it offers is actually pretty decent, provided you have more fusion monsters on the field. And yeah, obviously you can only control 1 of them, because yeah, I mean, you can only, and this thing can only after it uses its effect, it can be used as a really good fusion material for one of their later fusion monsters, which we'll get into quite soon. And yeah, their next monster is Frightfur Leo, requires specifically Edgem Saw and any Fluffal monster. Must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. You can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. You can only use this effect of Frightfur Leo once per turn. This card cannot attack your opponent directly during the turn you activate this effect. I mean, tolerable removal and decent burn damage if you really want to stretch it. There has nice stats for a level 7. And yeah, if you run Edgem Saw, you run at least 1 or 2 of these. So yeah, run by preference. Their next monster is their level 8 Frightfur Kraken. Requires specifically an Edge Imp monster and any Fluffal monster. Once per turn, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. This card cannot attack directly the turn this effect is activated. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase. Once per turn, at the end of the battle phase, if this card battles, you can change it to defense position. I really love how the removal effect is a non-destruction removal effect, which can pretty much disable some floating in some monsters might have. I like how it can attack twice, but I don't like how it cannot attack at all upon using its effect. It's a fun little card to build decks around, and I mean, to build the variants of Frightfurs around, and yeah, you can't go wrong with running two of these, so yeah, good card. Their next monster is Frightfur Daredevil. Requires 1 Edgem monster and 1 Fluffal monster. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. If this face-up card is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while its owner controls it, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each Frightfur monster in your graveyard. You can only use this effect of Frightfur Daredevil once per turn. It's their biggest base beater, and that's about all it does, because the burn damage is Well, if you're really building a Frightfur deck specifically centered around dealing burn damage, you can go wrong with this thing. But yeah, I mean, run one because it's their biggest base beater and it can save you in a pinch. So yeah. And now moving on to one of their final fusion monsters, that being Frightfur Sabertooth. Requires a Frightfur fusion monsters and one or more Fluffal and or Egypt Saber monsters. When this card is fusion summoned, you can target one Frightfur monster in your graveyard, special summon it. All Frightfur monsters you control gain 400 attack. If this card was fusion summoned by using 3 or more fusion materials, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. And if we add the targeting to the mix, well, yeah, there are. I think the Archetype has a few support cards which prevent monsters from being targeted by card effects, which turns this thing into a pretty insane boss monster. The Frightfur Fusion monster, one of the best targets for this thing is definitely Frightfur Tiger, so you can summon another one when you get rid of the first one. So yeah. This thing is pretty insane and it warrants 2 spots in the extra deck, there's no question about it. And their final monster is Frightfur Chimera, requires 3 Frightfur monsters, and must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. If this card battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can special summon that monster to your field, but its attack is hulled. You can only use this effect of Frightfur Chimera once per turn. This card gains 300 attack for each monster you control that is owned by your opponent. So yeah, this is another boss monster, so to speak, and I love it has the disabling effect from Frightfur Sheep, and I really love how you can then recycle the opponent's monster and summon it to your field to offer more usage with link spamming and fusion spamming, or well, more link spamming than fusion spamming, since it's basically a part of an engine you don't need, and the battle boost is okay-ish, so yeah. Run optimally by your preference. I'd say 1 or 2 is optimal by my standards. Alright, next up we have their first spell card, Toy Vendor, which we've mentioned quite a few times by now. It's a continuous spell, and it says once per turn you can discard 1 card, draw 1 card and show it. Then if it's a Fluffal monster, you can special summon from your hand. Otherwise, discard the card you drew. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Egypt Sabers or 1 Fluffal monster from your deck to your hand. Yes, RNG, because that's what we need. I mean, the only way you're possibly gonna get use of this thing is by running it specifically for the Fluffal Wings effect, so you can draw 2 cards and perform a surge. So yeah, Toy Vendor is usually run at 2 because of the Fluffal Wings. Next up we have another continuous spell, Frightfur Sanctuary. Activate this card by discarding 1 card and sending 2 Frightfur monsters from your extra deck to the graveyard. All fusion monsters you control are also treated as Frightfur monsters. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Frightfur fusion monster in your graveyard and return it to the extra deck. I would have loved if it was special summoning, not just returning to the extra deck, because the stupid design choices, I know. I mean, this is a really sweet effect because of extra deck dumping as well, and it secures usages of a certain archetypal fusion spell, which we'll get into later. So yeah, Frightfur Sanctuary, run 1 or 2 of these, depending on your choice. Next up is Secure Rebirth. Target 1 Fluffal or Frightfur monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but its effects are negated. You can only activate 1 Secure Rebirth once per turn. Simple monster reborn effect, and you should always run 3. However, it does not work on Egypt Saber monsters, so its usage is slightly limited, but it's okay to matter. Next up we have Frightfur Reborn. Target 1 Frightfur monster in your graveyard, special summon it. During your main phase, except this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard and target one of your banished Fluffal or Frightfur monsters, return it to the graveyard. More Octo Recycling, which I like, and this is another archetypal monster reborn, and yeah, I love it. However, it cannot bring back all Frightfur monsters since most of them need to be fusion summoned and all, so run 1 or 2. Next up we have Frightfur Patchwork. So it's a monster and a spell card at the same time. Wow, who would have thought, man? Oh, the monster was Fluffal Patchwork. Sorry. I misremembered. Well, anyway, this is Frightfur Patchwork. Add one polymerization and one edge imp monster from your deck to your hand. You can only activate one Frightfur Patchwork once per turn. This is actually pretty insane. Wow. A search card that adds a polymerization and an edge imp monster, I mean, one of the fusion materials to the hand. Yeah, this is pretty insane, and you should always run 3 of these, especially in conjunction since Frightfur Tiger is a thing. Yeah, insanely good card. Next up we have Frightfur Factory. You can banish one polymerization card, or a polymerization spell or fusion spell from your card graveyard, except the fusion wave motion. Fusion summon one Frightfur fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished Frightfur fusion. You can target one of your banished Frightfur fusion and add it to your hand. You can only use each effect of Frightfur Factory once per turn. Frightfur Fusion is their archetypal fusion spell, and we'll get to that later. And yeah, this is a pretty okay card. So yeah, run one or 2 of these if you feel like it. So yeah. It offers the usage of the banished, of the discarded fusion spells, so yeah, it's never dead in your hand, basically. Well, it can break you sometimes, but it's a bit too far off in between to even matter, so it's a good card, so run 1 or 2 of these. And yeah, this is the card mentioned earlier, that being Frightfur Fusion. Fusion summon one Frightfur Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your field or graveyard. You can only use this effect, and you can only activate the effect of Frightfur Fusion once per turn. So yeah, you run 3 of these because of Edge Imp Chain and other cards that surge these things. So yeah, this is a really cool card to use. So yeah, and it banishes as well Octo and Frightfur Patchwork. No, for Frightfur Reborn. Recycle it back from the graveyard, from the banish zone into the graveyard. So yeah, run 3 Frightfur Fusions at all time. Alright, moving on to their trap cards, we have Designer Frightfur. Target one Edge Imp or Fluffal monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and if you do it can be treated as a Frightfur monster for a fusion summon. And this is a cool card, and it offers renaming shenanigans for fusion summoning and all that. So yeah, run 2 or 3 of these. Their next trap card is Fluffal Crane. When a face-up Fluffal monster you control is destroyed by your opponent's attack or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of those destroyed monsters, add it to your hand, and if you do, draw 1 card. More draw power, which the archetype really needs, and yeah, it requires battle destruction or effect destruction in order to go off, so it's a bit clunky to boot, but yeah, run 1 at least, because it's draw power. Their next trap card is Frightfur March, a counter trap, and when an opponent's spell or trap or monster effect is activated that targets a Frightfur monster you control, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Then you can send one of the targeted Frightfur monsters to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon one level 8 or higher Frightfur Fusion monster from your extra deck. The special summon is treated as a fusion summon, and during your next end phase banish the monster special summon by this effect. I would have loved if this card didn't have the banish upon the next end phase effect, but the other stuff is pretty good too. Since the monster you'll be special summoning with this effect is most likely going to be Chimera, so yeah, it's an okay card for the time, and even nowadays it's pretty cool, and it's simple negation, so you should run 3 of these at all times. And their final card is Fusion Fright Waltz. Target one Frightfur Fusion monster you control and one fusion monster your opponent controls. Destroy as many other special summon monsters on the field as possible. Then each player that had a monster destroyed by this effect takes damage equal to the combined current attack of the targeted monster to the field. This is a really specific fusion related burn card, and yeah, it's one of those things you usually build your entire deck around. And if you're wondering why this thing was ever printed, it's because of the anime reference of Sora and Yuzu performing, well, a waltz dance referencing the Beauty and the Beast. I know, it's stupid, and I mean, usually archetypal burn cards that come out of nowhere don't tend to be printed, but yeah, here we are. And anyway, that was it for Frightfurs, and now let's get into the grades. Consistency is, I mean, we have Fluffal Dog here, which searches out the entire archetype. The draw power exists in form of Penguin, Crane, and even Fluffal Wings, but those are a bit too specific for my liking, and the basic searching is not very optimal with Fluffal Dog, since it can only be used once per turn. It works on normal summoning most of the time, so I'll give it about 2 out of 3 there. Then we have Power. Power usually depends on their higher fusion monsters, since Frightfur Tiger is more of a removal card than a beat stick, so I'll give it a 2 out of 3 at least for trying. Now, comeback ability, I'm gonna give them a 3 out of 3 because Soul Charge can basically be an OTK enabler at times, and even their own archetypal revival cards offer really decent recovery, so I'll be generous and give them a 2 or 3 out of 3, like I already mentioned. Protection, it exists only in form of Sabertooth, and that's as far as it goes, and yeah, I'm giving them a 1 out of 3 there. Versatility, well, this archetype isn't really splashable in anything else, but it is susceptible to experimentation with some OTK aspects, so yeah, I'll be generous and give him a 2 out of 3 as well. So yeah, this is a pretty nice archetype, as I already said, and one of my favorites aesthetically as the cute little plushy toys from your childhood combined with dangerous scissory fiends into nasty Frightfur destruction machines and all that. And yeah, that's Frightfurs, and yeah, those were the last fusion spammers I will be looking at in a long time. So yeah, we have XC spammers next, and then we have something interesting after that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos and updates. Comment, like, and subscribe, and as usual, I'll upload the next part whenever I can. See you all, have a good day, and peace.